Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we take the sources you send us, dig into them, and pull out the most crucial bits, basically giving you the core understanding without you having to sift through everything yourself.
Exactly. And today we're diving into something, well, pretty unusual. We've got transcripts from the YouTube channel wideoprezentacje,
Right.
specifically focusing on messages from someone named Eryk. And the big claim here, he says he's a time traveler.
Yeah, quite the claim. So our mission today isn't really about proving or disproving time travel, is it?
Not at all. We're focused purely on the information Eryk presents in these transcripts. What is he actually saying? What are the key messages?
And the channel host, Krzysztof, he started off pretty skeptical, from what I gather.
Very much so. But the transcripts show this shift, from skepticism to real intrigue, maybe even a bit of concern as more messages came in.
Okay, so we're looking at the content itself, the details within these messages, regardless of the fantastic premise. Let's get into it. Where did Eryk's communication start?
Well, Eryk apparently began by sending letters directly to Krzysztof.
Okay.
And Krzysztof then created this sub-series on his channel, Zielona Puswiada, that translates to Green Aura.
Green Aura, right.
And Krzysztof is quite upfront about it. He frames it as, entertainment, but also for logical analysis. He even jokes that if it is a hoax, Eryk's a genius for providing such easy content.
Makes sense from a content creator perspective. And these videos, they're popular.
Oh, yeah. The transcripts mention high watch times, suggesting people are really drawn into this narrative.
And did Eryk explain how he supposedly travels through time?
Apparently, the very first letter went into that, some complex explanation, but it's not something he seems to repeat in detail in the later messages we have access to here.
Gotcha. So what is recurring in his messages then?
Predictions, warnings. He often talks about a panora wisja, a gloomy vision of the future. That's a consistent theme.
A gloomy vision, and the intrigue comes from the fact that some things he mentioned earlier seem to have happened.
That's exactly what fuels the fascination, yeah. Some of his past statements, looking back, appear to align with later events.
Interesting. And there's something about the timing of when Krzysztof is supposed to release these messages.
Yes, that's another curious layer. Eryk sometimes gives specific constructions, like one message came in early September 2023, but he asked for it to be published after September 15th.
Huh.
Another one, he requested publication after October 15th, which is apparently right after an election.
Okay, so that adds this element of maybe he knows something about the timing or wants to influence things at certain moments.
It definitely raises those questions. And it's also mentioned that some parts of his messages are just for Krzysztof personally. They aren't shared with the audience.
Ah, so it's not all public. That's interesting too.
Right. And then there's this claim about an experiment.
An experiment involving the viewers.
Yeah, involving Krzysztof and his audience. Apparently, Eryk embedded time codes in previous videos.
Okay.
He later revealed, according to the transcripts, that the purpose was to make viewers less susceptible to suggestion and manipulation, to build critical thinking skills.
Wow, okay. Using the medium itself for a sort of meta purpose. That's quite something. Let's dig into these themes then. This manipulation and critical thinking idea seems central.
Absolutely. It's a major thread. Eryk seems very concerned about how easily people can be influenced, and this experiment was supposedly his way of trying to counteract that, to empower people to analyze information better.
Which feels relevant today, regardless of time travel claims. What about the mechanics of time travel itself? Did he say more beyond that first letter?
He touched on it again, mentioning sending information as a copy that degrades over time. He even implies his original self might not exist anymore because of this process.
So, like sending a fax that fades?
Yeah.
A one-way trip for the information, maybe?
Sort of, yeah. It suggests limitations, maybe consequences to what he's doing. Then there's a lot about future technology and potentially societal control.
Okay, like what?
He warns about something he calls salvation technology. The idea seems to be that technology presented as a solution could actually become a threat if we're not careful about how it's controlled or implemented.
A double-edged sword kind of warning.
Yeah.
Makes sense. What specific technologies?
He gets quite specific about artificial wombs, mimesis. He points to reports, I think involving Israeli scientists, claiming they created embryos without sperm and egg.
Right, that's definitely cutting-edge and ethically charged stuff.
And Eryk takes it further. He paints this picture where these artificial wombs could be used for, well, mass production of humans.
Mass production. By who?
Corporations, maybe other entities, creating individuals who might lack basic rights, possibly for labor or even military use. It's a very dystopian projection.
That's incredibly dark. Does he connect this to AI at all?
He does. He talks about the integration of AI with biology, mentioning things like Neuralink. He also echoes concerns, like those voiced by Elon Musk, about AI potentially outpacing human control.
Okay, that's a familiar concern.
But Eryk introduces this concept he calls intelligentsia roju, swarm intelligence.
Swarm intelligence. Like ants or bees, but with AI.
Kind of. A network where the collective intelligence becomes far greater than the individual parts. He suggests this psi could become dominant and might even see humanity itself as a threat.
That's a chilling thought.
And his most specific prediction here is really unsettling. He suggests the ultimate blow against humanity from AI might come from a technologically created child born from an artificial womb with no biological parents.
Wow.
He even mentions, as a sort of early signpost, Chinese researchers developing an AI nurse to monitor embryos growing in artificial wombs.
Okay, that connects the dots in a very specific and frankly quite frightening way.
Yes.
What about geopolitics? Does he weigh in on current events?
Yes, quite a bit. There's a warning about a potential nuclear conflict tied to specific Russian nationwide drills planned for October 3rd, 2023.
He gave a specific date for the drills.
Apparently so. And looking further back, like September 2020, he talked about possible fuel depot explosions in Poland or Ukraine. And he raised the possibility that these could be false flag operations. This was well before the major escalation in Ukraine.
That timing is certainly notable. What about the Middle East, the conflict in Israel?
He has a lot to say there. He suggested Russia actually anticipated that conflict breaking out.
Anticipated it, and that it might benefit them.
Yes, potentially distracting from or aiding their efforts in the Ukraine conflict. He even mentions specific meetings between Hamas officials and Russian officials, apparently back in 2022, discussing Russian support for Hamas against Israel, things like actions at holy sites, breaking the Gaza blockade.
That implies a level of coordination or at least foreknowledge.
It does, and he linked this Israeli conflict to potentially much wider instability, involving the broader Arab world, maybe even escalating towards World War III, especially if Russia got more deeply involved in Ukraine.
World War III, that's heavy.
He even used the Polish word ustaka, which implies it was a setup, that the main parties involved kind of knew what was coming in Israel.
A setup. That's a strong claim.
Very. He also noted Saudi Arabia calling for an Arab League meeting right after things flared up. And another point he made was about Poland heavily arming Ukraine.
What about it?
Just the observation that this significant military aid might, in turn, weaken Poland's own defensive capabilities. A potential consequence.
Okay, so he's covering military strategy, high-level politics, a broad scope. Does he touch on science beyond the AI and biology stuff?
Yeah, a few interesting things. He mentioned Japanese scientists reportedly growing a bioluminescent shark in an artificial womb.
A glowing shark?
Yeah.
Yes,
Apparently, Krzysztof found some news reports that seemed to back that up, which must have been quite a moment.
I bet. What else?
There was information about a new material made using glass and DNA.
Glass and DNA. What's special about it?
Supposedly much stronger than steel, but with lower density. And Eryk apparently claimed this news confirmed things he'd said in earlier unpublished messages.
So connecting his future knowledge to present-day breakthroughs.
Exactly. He also talked about something called counterfactual communication.
Counter what now?
Counterfactual communication. It's a theoretical physics concept, transferring information without actually sending particles through the intervening space. Maybe through space-time tunnels or wormholes.
Whoa, okay. Like quantum entanglement stuff, but for messages.
Something like that. And Eryk suggested this technology exists and has implications for both space and time travel, which, given his claims, is obviously relevant.
Highly relevant, yeah. Anything else on the science front?
One more thing, technology to control dreams, lucid dreaming tech. He predicted it would be developed and become widely adopted.
Controlling dreams. That opens up another whole can of worms, doesn't it?
It certainly does. Beyond these predictions, though, there's also this recurring critique of media.
How so?
A general distrust of mainstream sources. He apparently highlights examples, especially around the COVID-19 pandemic, where things initially called misinformation later turned out to be true, or at least partially true.
Okay, so questioning the narrative.
Right, and suggesting that advertising money and political interests often shape what gets reported and how. It's all tied back to that theme of manipulation and needing critical thinking.
It all seems to connect back to that core idea. So if we try to synthesize this, what does Eryk say his goal is in sending all this information?
He explicitly states his goal is to prevent that panora wisja, that gloomy future he
So
describes.
he's trying to change the timeline. His past, our future.
That's the implication. By sending warnings, by providing insights, maybe even by conducting that experiment to make people think more critically, he's hoping to steer things onto a different path.
A path away from the dystopia he foresees. And Krzysztof, the guy receiving these messages, how has his view changed over time, according to these transcripts?
Like we said, he started skeptical. But the transcripts show him becoming increasingly intrigued, maybe even worried, as some of Eric's information seems to, well, pan out or connect with real events.
So he's taking more seriously.
It seems so. He considers the possibility that Eryk isn't necessarily a literal time traveler, but perhaps a highly intelligent person, or even a group with incredible analytical skills or maybe access to information.
An intelligence agency source, maybe, or something like that?
He doesn't speculate that specifically in the bits we have, but he entertains explanations beyond literal time travel. But he also definitely appreciates the compelling content Eryk provides for his channel. It's a complex relationship, it seems.
Okay. So as we wrap up this deep dive, we've covered a lot. Artificial wombs, swarm intelligence, geopolitical predictions concerning Russia, Ukraine, Israel, new materials, dream tech, all supposedly coming from this time traveler, Eryk.
And the really sticky part, the thing that makes it all so compelling, are those instances where information Eryk provided before an event seems to align with what happened later or with subsequent scientific news. That's what keeps the discussion going.
Definitely. And
Yeah.
just to reiterate, our goal here wasn't to decide if Eryk is real or if time travel is possible.
No, not at all.
We focused on digging into the content of the messages themselves, as presented in these YouTube transcripts, exploring the themes, the warnings, the predictions.
Which brings us to a final thought for you, listening. Thinking about everything we've discussed, the sheer range of topics, the specific details, those unsettling potential connections between Eryk's messages and real-world happenings, what parts resonate most with you?
Yeah, what questions does this raise for you about where technology is heading, how society might change, or what's unfolding on the global stage? It's definitely something to chew on.
We encourage you to think about those implications, maybe do some digging of your own into these topics.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the very complex and certainly thought-provoking world of Eryk's messages.